And here we go. This is Deneen Diamond from the Center of Excellence for Health at the Department of Education. I am extremely excited to have Sophia Ray Kirsten Abbass with us today. And I am going to share a little bit about her, but I do want to say thank you right away. Sophia's taking some time out of her busy schedule to be with us today. She actually is in school. She is 16 and goes to high school in Nova Scotia. And you know what, Sophia? Rather than me introducing you, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do for fun?
Okay, that's a very long list. I do get into this as well in my presentation. I have a little tiny bio, but I do a lot. My current endeavor is starting a podcast with my mom. She's incredible, so we have that going, and I actually do all of the editing for it. So it comes out every second Thursday, and most of the time, if I can balance school and work at the same time, which kind of is a struggle sometimes. Um, and yeah, we have some pretty cool guests on. I think my sister is coming on for our newest episode, and she's incredible. She talks about using dyslexia as a superpower, which, I props to her for being so open about her learning differences. So that's my newest endeavor, and I do a lot of other stuff as well, but I'm so excited to be speaking to you guys today. Perhaps if we're good to go, I'll start my presentation. All right, I'm actually going to share my screen, and we'll make sure that you guys can see. All right, can everybody see this?
Yep, we're good to go, Sophia.
Okay, perfect. So today I'm going to be presenting on mindfulness and trauma in teens. So like I said, hi everyone, my name is Sophia Ray, and I am a singer-songwriter, dancer, activist, public speaker, producer, and co-host of Spark, a Mother-Daughter Journey. Like I said, a podcast I do alongside my incredible mom, Jenny Kierstead. My parents are Jenny Kierstead and Blair Abbass, who are both educators in mindfulness and yoga. And they've always told my sister and I that mindfulness practices, that's like money in the bank, because you're never quite sure when you're going to need to draw on them, but they're there if you need them. And 2020 and even 2021 were 2 years that I really put these practices to the test. And I would say that life has given me the unfortunate opportunity to speak on a very personal level about trauma in teens. But not only that, it has really opened my eyes to the struggle of every teen around me. So before we begin, I want to clarify one thing, is that I believe that most of us right now would be able to articulate what trauma feels like, but I don't know if all of us really know what it is. I'm sure I did not before all of this, which I will get into. So I want to clarify, what exactly is trauma? So the term trauma is most simply defined as an injury to a person's physical or emotional well-being. It is also described as a shock which can shatter the nervous system, leaving a person emotionally wounded, confused, and unable to carry out normal life tasks. Now, there are three main types of trauma. So first we have acute trauma, which essentially means there's the bell, a one-time traumatic experience like a car accident or a sporting injury. And then there is chronic exposure to traumatic situations such as abuse. And finally, there is complex trauma, which is the exposure to varied and multiple traumatic events, often of an interpersonal or social nature. So what are the feelings associated with trauma? So the first would be intense fear. Secondly would be helplessness. Third, loss of control. And fourth, the threat of danger. And before I go any further, I want to make sure that we all know how to take care if we feel triggered by anything I share today, and that we give ourselves permission to do so if we need. So there's three things that I always use when I start to feel overwhelmed, so I'm going to share them with you today. Firstly is to ground yourself by feeling your feet in contact with the floor. Secondly, we have take a couple deep belly breaths. And then third, we have doodle or draw as a way of calming your nervous system. So let's now start with my story. So on the morning of April 19th, 2020, I woke up to a seemingly normal day, or as normal as it could be during a global pandemic, of course, which was a reality that felt already impossible to maneuver. And on this morning, my mom calls me over and she says, "Sophia, there is a warning of an active shooter in Portapique." And I was like, "What?" And I remember I had just woken up, so with the haze of sleep still lingering, I attempted to process what she just told me, and she continues, she says, "I just texted Lisa, who is my aunt. She said, I haven't heard back yet, but let's not worry though. It's all going to be okay." And in that moment, I had a sinking feeling in my gut. You know that feeling where you can tell something isn't right? I remember thinking to myself that in itself, it felt like an empty promise. So we get a call from Catherine, my godmother, and confusion starts to rise, and there's different information spiraling. And I heard someone say to me that they were just rumors, but I honestly couldn't shake that feeling of unease. And a couple minutes later, my dad gets a call, and he relays the news that Lisa McCulley, my aunt, has been murdered. Now, when someone tells you something of such impact, you would assume that they would feel the world crashing down on them. But I didn't, and in fact, in that moment, I honestly don't remember feeling anything. I remember almost monitoring my reactions, searching for the pain, wondering why it wasn't there. I was almost worried that I wasn't presenting any pain. My mom, however, she couldn't process it. So my mom had actually just lost her brother 2 years prior, and in that moment she became an only child at the mere age of 47. So the rest of this day was spent in complete shock as we attempted to process this new reality we now had to call ours, while throughout the day receiving updates on the number of deaths. So it was a very public thing. I remember we turned on the television and it was 5 deaths, then it was 15 and 10, or 10, 15, different information, and then finally at the end, 22. And for those of you who don't know the whole scope of the story, on the night of April 18th, 2020, the unthinkable became a reality here in Nova Scotia. And later we would learn about a man disguised as a Mountie who wreaked complete havoc, killing 22 innocent lives. Now, this mass shooting in Nova Scotia left the province in complete shock and immense grief, and the repercussions of this violent act still continue to haunt Nova Scotia to this day. Now, people react to traumatic events in vastly different ways, and I honestly think some might not even realize they are experiencing trauma until sometime afterward. Now, in my opinion, I really don't believe there's one set trajectory for grief, for trauma, for anything, because everyone deals with it in different ways, some obviously less skillful than others. But I'm discovering that after experiencing a traumatic event, there really is no one-size-fits-all. So my trauma, for example, manifested in a hyper-awareness of COVID. So the gunman was gone, but I transferred my fear. So last year I actually rarely went to school because I was so completely terrified of COVID. I didn't want to lose another family member. I actually isolated myself completely from the outside world. I didn't hang out with any of my friends, nor did I engage in any extracurricular activities that didn't require people to be masked. I actually presented behaviors that resemble OCD, or obsessive compulsive disorder. And honestly, when I look back on that year, I really don't recognize the person I became. I lost touch with some of my closest friends, which are now friendships that I have rekindled, but it was a very scary and lonely time. Now, in my opinion, trauma needs to be something that is readily talked about, since we all experience difficult, painful things that shock our system. And despite the awareness we have today, I believe there is still a stigma around acknowledging hard times. But I always say, if we don't acknowledge them, then how are we going to move forward? A couple weeks ago, on the 2nd-year anniversary of the mass shooting, I went to school. We had just returned from a trip to California to get away from the inquiry which is happening right now in Nova Scotia. And it's something on a legal level. It's taking a very in-depth look of the events of April 18th and 19th, which can be a lot to go through all over again. So we decided to take a little trip, just take a break. And however, on the day of the anniversary, when I got back, I was very behind on all my schoolwork, and I found myself in math doing homework during lunch hour. And I became very overwhelmed by the gravity of the situation and everything that my family was facing on this day, and I actually started to cry. Now, it was a fellow student in that room that noticed and actually came over to support me through. And this is incredible. Okay. I want to share this with you because it sticks with me to this day. So she knelt down eye to eye with me and she said, "Sophia, you're so friggin' strong and I am so proud of you for facing this difficult moment." And obviously at this point I'm like crying even more because it's the sweetest thing anybody's ever said to me. She continues, she says, "What you're feeling right now, it's okay." And then she asks, "Can I give you a hug?" So let's just unpack this brief interaction for a moment. This peer who I really wasn't close to made eye contact, fostering connection and trust. She then acknowledged my inner resources of strength and bravery for being present to my pain. She used co-regulation to help ground me by affirming that my feelings were seen and completely valid. And finally, she asked for permission first, and then she comforted me with physical affection through her reassuring embrace. And I want to break that down even further, because this can be used to support someone or a friend in a crisis. So first we have eye contact, then we have acknowledgement, then we have co-regulation, and fourth, we have comfort. So trauma, it greatly impacts our mental health, which is demonstrated with the reaction I had on that day. And I believe we all need to give ourselves permission to reach out for help when we need it, which it might look like having an honest conversation with your parents, contacting your guidance counselor, or even asking for a professional therapist. I believe we all need to understand that it's not a sign of weakness to ask for help, but it's actually a sign of strength. And with the support of others, there is an opportunity for something, the term post-traumatic growth, which is the very best case scenario for anyone healing from a traumatic event. But in addition to outside help, it is also very effective to have tools that you yourself can draw on. So today, I'd like to offer a few exercises that you can apply in your life when times get tough. So the very first one is creative self-expression. Now, sometimes I've noticed that the pain becomes so overwhelming that I need a way to distract and release it. And it is at this point that I draw on my tool of self-expression. Now, for me, this could be writing poems or even music. I'm also a dancer, so that's definitely another outlet that I use to express myself. Now, for my mom, she's actually started a memoir. She's writing it right now as not only a way to tell her story, but as a way to help others in similar situations. My sister Bella has become an incredible chef. She's a master chef. It's absolutely insane. And is now actually starting up a small business. So these are all examples of self-expression. And I invite you to take some time, maybe right now, to figure out what types of self-expression work for you. This could be physical activity or art, anything that lets you take a moment to breathe and really center yourself. The next thing is having a mantra. So in the past couple of months, I've not only struggled with my mental health, but also with acne and eye problems. And my mind is very, very susceptible to something that I call micro-focusing, meaning sometimes the only thing I can think about in that moment is a certain problem I'll have at that point in time. And when this happens, it's very difficult for me to bring myself out of this spiral. So I've actually chosen the mantra, "This too shall pass." And in stating that, I catch myself before my thinking starts to spiral. Now, funny enough, I've actually ordered temporary tattoos that say "This too shall pass." I'll probably put them somewhere visible, probably on my finger or my arm. And that way I have a constant reminder that my problems are temporary and that they will pass, just like the tattoo. Next is gratitude. So when I find myself spinning out of control, it's very helpful for me to change my awareness from the problems at hand to everything that I'm grateful for. And this can be a very, very difficult practice, especially when you're in the depths of a problem. So I actually like to have something I call my gratitude journal, which throughout my days I will take notes of things that am grateful for, and then that way when I start to become micro-focused on a certain problem, I'm able to look back on the positives of life, and it really shows me the big picture, allowing me to understand just how fortunate I am to even be here today. And with that gratitude journal, it allows me to not have to come up with things I'm grateful for in the depths of a problem, which can be really hard. I know for me, when I'm in the depths of a problem, I can't really think of things that I'm grateful for. I'm just so completely micro-focused. So having that journal that I take notes of certain things throughout my day it really helps me come back to that. Okay, this one is my favorite. This one is name entertainment. And this is the practice of identifying what you're feeling or thinking so that you can help yourself to feel better. My mom, she always uses this analogy. So if a car breaks down, what's the very first thing you would do? Well, you bring it to a mechanic and they'd figure out what's going on. You can't fix or heal anything until you know what the root of the issue is. So this helps us do exactly that. I believe we're all a little bit disconnected from our bodies, and sometimes I don't think we all really know what's going on, what we actually need. I know that I have definitely experienced this. And this ties into a term called introception, which refers to the inward perception or our ability to perceive what our mind and body need. Now, we do this by taking a few deep breaths and really connecting to what our body is telling us. And by doing this in times of struggle, you're able to identify the root of the issue. And once you have the root of the issue identified, you're able to give it voice. And naming it is really such a freeing practice. So I invite you right now, just to take a moment to be present to our bodies. This is without the need to change or fix anything. But I want us to just observe how you're sitting. Perhaps we can take a couple deep breaths here. How are you breathing in this moment? Perhaps connect to what you're feeling. So perhaps you're happy, maybe a little tired. Let me take one more deep breath here. And that for me, when I really need to figure out what's going on, because sometimes there can be a lot, it's very layered, that practice for me really, really helps. Now the next is self-care. So it's so important that we take time for ourselves, and today, as you guys know, it's very easy to slide out of balance. So we need to carve out time in our schedule every day to do something that restores us. So for me, I'm a really big fan of the Calm app, which actually provides you with short meditations that you can do at any time to help center your mind. And I actually take time out of my schedule every day to do this at night. And that way I kind of cement it in my routine. So I know it's there and I come back to it every single day. And it really helps me wind down after a very stressful day. Now, perhaps we can take a minute to just think of what you yourself can do as self-care to help center your mind and body each day. And maybe adapt using the Calm app as well. It's really helpful. And lastly, we have talking to a professional. So sometimes the very best thing to do is seek professional help. I know it can be scary to reach out for help, but they have all the tools necessary to help you through trying times. And sometimes relying on friends or family members, it's just too much for them or beyond their scope of ability. And in closing, I just want to say that if you're struggling right now, that you're not alone. I'm with you, I understand. And suffering, it's really a universal experience. So I want you to remember that there's always a healthy solution as a way to ease the pain. And perhaps think of a way that you can support one another, knowing that everyone is fighting their own battles. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to open the floor to some questions or comments now. And yeah, I'm also going to add my socials. I never really leave this slide up for long enough, so I'm going to also type them in the chat so you guys can contact me if you want to talk about anything at all. I'm here. And happy to answer questions if you don't want to share them with the group and you just want to share them with me. That's perfectly fine. I'm going to type these in the chat now for you guys.
Thank you so much, Sophia. I have had the opportunity to hear Sophia speak for a couple of years now, and yes, she's only 16, but she can articulate and tell her beautiful story in a way that really resonates with students and with teachers and with anybody. So I want to say thank you so much for sharing your story and being brave enough to be open and really true to how you're feeling and all the different layers that sometimes as adults we forget about what the teenagers are going through or what young people are going through. So certainly the last few years have been difficult for everybody, but for you, sharing your story I'm sure it's very difficult. So we appreciate that. And I do want to open up the floor to questions. I have one quick question, but teachers, if you can put in the chat any questions that the students have, or if a student's brave enough to come on the camera and ask a question, we love that. But one of my questions was about your meditation that you do at night and the mindfulness practice for your self-care. And I know that's very difficult for people to put into their routine. I'm wondering what helped you to get to where it became part of your routine and not a have to, but
Right.
maybe a want to.
I think for me, it was kind of a breaking point where I was like, okay, I need to make a change. I'm not doing well, and I need to draw on these tools that I have. So Mom would go through with me when I was younger. She does something called progressive relaxation. So we kind of start from the head, and then we start to relax every little part of our body. And I'll do this at night because I kind of have insomnia. I don't sleep very well. So that's where I was like, I need to start adapting these exercises because they work. I'm living proof that they do work. And yeah, they've really been life-changing for me.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And I also see a chat, where do we find your podcast? So it's going to be on www.girlonfire.ca or girlonfire.ca. It's Mom's website, but it's on there, and there's a little tiny tab.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'll get Stacy to put that in the chat as well. And the podcast is also located on the Center of Excellence website. So they're both right there. Perfect.
Perfect.
Any other questions from students or from teachers?
I'll put my Instagram handle and my Snap in the chat while we wait and stuff. So my Instagram is SophiaRay_official. Hopefully I wrote that right. Sophia Ray. Yeah, I think that's right. And then Snap is SophiaRay82. There we go.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you again, Sophia. Certainly, Sophia is open to take your questions. Again, if you want to talk to her in a private space, certainly reach out to Sophia. And if you'd like to know more about Sophia and how she can speak to maybe some of the other classes in your school, you can certainly reach out to me, or you can reach out to Sophia directly. She's becoming her own, I guess, business as well, just like Bella, who's become the master chef. And I will say that the podcast is absolutely lovely. Sophia and Jenny both have an extremely soothing voice, and I listen to it in the morning while I'm walking, and it's absolutely beautiful. So I highly recommend that, maybe just to help soothe. Maybe that's one of your self-care techniques that you put into your day. So with that, I want to say thank you again so much. We really appreciate it. And to teachers that are listening, this will be recorded and placed on the Center of Excellence website. And I also will be sending it to Sophia to put on any of the platforms that she has as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. I do see some chats here. What would you suggest if you feel you aren't comfortable telling someone what you're going through? I have definitely seen this a lot. And I feel like when a traumatic event happens, it's scary to talk about it with someone else. I'm quite an open book, so I kind of I've chosen the people in my life that I know will hold a safe space. So I have those people down, and I know that they're there if I need them, and I come to them when I need them. Now, if you aren't comfortable telling someone what you're going through, there's also some helpful resources like Kids Help Phone. It doesn't have to be if you're in like a huge crisis. I know a bunch of people that actually use Kids Help Phone, and it's super helpful for them. So I would suggest that. And also, I'm here as well if you want to send your questions to me. I'm not, I'm still learning and evolving. I don't have all the answers, but I love to help. So, yeah. Let's see. How would you recommend teachers start mindfulness in classrooms? There's definitely resources out there for that. Again, I don't, this is more mom's domain. She would know what to say to this question, but I would say, in between, because, okay, so for me, I'm in high school, so we obviously rotate. But I would say if you're teaching a class and you have that class the entire day, maybe just like put it in as little tiny breaks in the schedule, like a movement break, for example, because we're sitting a lot. And so it's nice to have that kind of switch up in our routines.
One thing I'll add to that, Sophia, is I always tell teachers about mindful minutes. And it's just taking a moment to, like you said, ground yourself, put your feet flat on the ground, take your belly breaths. And sometimes those mindful minutes are for teachers more than the students, just to give them a minute, just to
Yeah.
breathe, because we know what it's like when students are constantly asking the teacher questions. So again, teachers, be I guess mindful of what you need in your classroom and what you need in your day, because adding those moments in, not just for the students but for yourself, is really going to help calm the energy in the classroom. And I'm sure everybody in the room and everybody right now is listening. If you take 3 deep breaths in any room that you're in, the energy completely shifts and it's beautiful. So I certainly I guess I recommend to take that moment when you need it.
Yeah, I completely agree. You sound like my mom.
Oh, that's such a compliment. Thank you. All right. Do we have any other questions? Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful. Awesome. Okay. Well, that was amazing. And like I said, Sophia, you are unbelievable. And I get shivers every time I listen to you speak, and you articulate so well and in such a very uh, meaningful way. And I think it really will help the students here in New Brunswick. So again, thank you so much. And we really want to, I guess, celebrate the work that you're doing. So thank you again. Appreciate it. And now you have to go back to your classes, or I'm going to get in trouble from your teachers.
No, we're good. I just see
Have
one
a
more
lovely day,
here.
everybody. Thank you so much for the Center of Excellence for Health. Thanks to Sophia. And hopefully you'll listen in to some more sessions for mental health.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Bye. Thank you, everyone.
See you later.